Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundless success to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. As usual, I'm Bill Correll, and I am here with one of my favorite people on the planet. I wish I had more time to spend with you, actually, but we will spend some time together this coming Saturday. I'm looking forward to that. How are you today, Jan Jeremias?
I'm okay. Thanks, Bill Correll.
Yeah.
We're being so formal. So I'm okay.
That was my, introduction of you, if you will.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I was thinking about what we should talk about today and wasn't quite sure, but I figured you'd probably have something on your mind. So,
We usually just grab it right out of thin air and away we go. But I really am looking forward to spending time with you on Saturday. There'll be the three of us, you, me, and Kate Mollison, who also has another podcast on this network. And we're going down to, believe it or not, be on a television show.
I know. First for me, I don't know if I've ever, since I was little, I don't know if I've ever been on a TV show.
Well, that's interesting because where I grew up in Colorado, there was a local television show that whenever people had birthdays, they went on this show. It was like Romper Room, but only it was a local deal. So I wanted to do this for my 5th birthday, and I just made a real stink out of it when I'm sitting at home and I wanted to be on the show and it was my birthday and I knew I wasn't on the show. So my dad picked me up and he sat me down on top of the old Admiral TV set. He said, "You're on the show now. You're on TV." So that was my first time on TV. But I've been on several times since then.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think of as an adult, I don't think I've ever been on.
Well, I've been interviewed for different reasons, maybe a half dozen times, and wound up on TV one way or the other. A couple of years ago, it was Channel 22, which I think is somewhere out of Massachusetts, and they were promoting, the Real Men Wear Pink, and I think it's just been shortened to Men Wear Pink, but it's about fundraising for breast cancer awareness and research. It's a very, very good cause. So, plus, being a cancer survivor myself, there was another angle to it, and I don't really consider myself to be an at-risk cancer survivor. I just am the kind of person you got to stay ahead of it. I've been going in twice a year for 12 years now, actually 13 years coming up, and a lot of excisions at the beginning, but not so much anymore. I had one little biopsy on my cheek, very, very tiny one, and I'm still waiting to get the feedback on that. So it's been a while since I've had a facial Mohs surgery, but this would be number 17 if I end up having to have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, maybe people at home didn't know that about me, but if we're Facebook friends, I don't keep it a secret because I have a lot of friends and relatives who have not gone in to see a dermatologist. And I guess this is a good time as any to recommend all of you should at least do that once every 2 years if you get an all clear. And if you don't get an all clear, make it more frequent. I go in every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that said, We're going to be talking about cancer on Saturday.
No, no, we're not.
It's a very interesting title to the program too. The word hope being in the title, and it's going to be grief and loss centric. So we'll be there also with another good friend of ours.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it will be an interesting conversation on Saturday. I'm very interested. I'm actually looking up the exact title because I wanted to refresh my memory of
Sure.
that. Um, okay, one's called "Grief as a Teacher," and the other is just
Um,
on the book.
yeah, Open to Hope show.
Yeah, but I like the title itself.
Right.
Um, I like the title itself, like "Grief as a Teacher." Um, and I was listening to a podcast yesterday on my drive back from New Jersey, from that area,
Right.
and they were talking about, the challenges, like the guy who was speaking about that part of his recovery or healing process from being an alcoholic and having an addiction, a drug addiction issue, a heroin addiction,
Right.
was when he started to help other people with the same issue.
Right.
And then his story, as he called it, because it was a lot about our what with the story that we have and the story we tell ourselves and the dialogue we have. All of a sudden, when it becomes more purposeful, like there's a greater purpose than the fact that you just had this experience, about that's when healing actually starts to, I think, become more present, or more in your, maybe you have the ability to heal just because all of a sudden it's not for the fact that I just endured this, basically, like I went through this and I endured it. So that's what the title makes me think of.
That's a long time principle of community. Uh, and it works for people in their jobs. It works for people in their marriages. It works for people in long-term relationships all the way around. But when you are aware and present to there being uh, a greater thing than self, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a supreme being, but just having a need to have a community that works, and to get behind people that are in recovery, and get behind people that are yeah, again, that found something that's outside of themselves that's worth going after. And that's I couldn't agree better with a definition of that's where healing starts, because when you're not contemplating how bad you feel all the time, you got openings for everything else, all the things that you missed out on while you were concentrating on self.
Yeah, I think that's I know that was part of it for me. And I think it was also just the actual feeling, or
Yeah.
the actual thing that I just felt the entire time I was going through what I was going through. I remember, was there has to be a greater purpose to this than me just suffering. Like there
Yeah.
has to be a deeper meaning, because otherwise, I mean, let me just throw in the towel now kind of attitude, because I'm in
Yes.
pain, basically. It is an emotional pain. So I was like, I have to figure out a way. There has to be something I'm supposed to learn from this. And that's how I took it, was what am I supposed to learn from this? And not even so much as how much am I supposed to be sharing with other people, but much more like what personally was I supposed to, what did I need to do to
Yes.
learn from this, basically, so it would never happen again. That was that was immediate, like my immediate kind of thing, like just so I don't go through this hell again kind of thing.
Well,
But
unfortunately, that sentence has caused us to have about 600,000 laws on the books in the United States. It's always so that this will never happen again. And why do you need so many laws? You just can't stop certain things from reoccurring.
right,
But
right. And yeah, go ahead, Bill.
whatever it is, it moves you on your journey, right?
Yep, absolutely, it does.
When you can separate yourself from the immediacy of the pain and start to get the lesson and start to come up with new questions, you're further ahead than before you had the trauma.
Hmm. Well, in the conversation, he got into this whole thing about people who survive, like people who survive extreme circumstances. And that could be a traumatic event, or it could be like, in the wilderness survival. And I should look up the book. I was listening, so I couldn't write down the name of the book, but he he referenced a book that was talking about like sort of certain age groups are more apt to survive.
Right.
Like young children will survive, and that's because they have no, like if they're adopted by a pack of wolves or or a group of monkeys, they're like, oh, okay, this is home now, and they just adapt. And they're he said the teenage years have a much lower rate because they start to question and they debate, and they're like through the whole thing of like, is this right, is this wrong, kind of thing. And then I guess there are periods, but it was really interesting to me that there were age groups where if something were to happen, particular ages were, which makes it made perfect sense to me about children,
Yes.
because they have this uncanny ability to say, okay, well, I need to eat. So, and then he talked a lot about like the fact that not staying in the same of one place, and actually like choosing either a landmark or a river and following a river, because eventually he said most of the time if you walk long enough, you're going to come in contact
Yeah.
with someone else. Where if you stay put and you're in the middle of the jungle somewhere, most likely you're going to die there because you're not going to be found. And he used the example of the girl who, like, the plane with the girl the only girl who survives in the Amazon, which, that and the sense of wonder. Like, it always loved in the excerpt of the book where she's like she was in the air and she's coming down, and she just looked down at the trees and she thought to herself how much it looked like broccoli. I mean, it was just like, but that idea of, and she followed like a river. And I think out of the whole plane, like, and she was the only one, no one wanted to follow her. She
Right.
went off on her own and she was the only one who survived.
Well, there's definitely a moral to that story, no doubt about it. Even if you're on the right track, if you just sit there, you'll get run over. So pick something and go there. And good Lord, we talk about this all the time. The whole optimism, positive attitude, all the rest of that sort of thing, and without really getting too far off track. But when you are choosing to be a particular state, be it positive or negative or whatever it is, you're actually putting something out there that's of your own choosing. And so, therefore, it's a different experience than if you're at the mercy of something. So, why not always be the first one to choose? Don't let the circumstances choose for you.
Yes. I mean, he was saying that, which was really interesting. And I always take these things as much more like not literal, like trying to like incorporate or say, okay, what in my life can, and he's saying most of the time, just think to yourself, I'm going to take one step forward. Like I'm
Yes.
going to move forward in some way. And he said, you might be wrong, you might be right, but at least you're doing something. Like you're
Right.
taking some sort of action, which is what you were to your comment a few seconds ago, and to what he was saying. Like most of the time, if you walk, even if it's not at a fast rate, like, I mean, if you can, depending on where you are, survive the elements and do all that kind of stuff, you're going
Right.
to encounter some other life, human being probably.
Right.
And I really love that he's like, most of the time, it's just like, take some action. And so I think that that whole idea of learning from grief, it was like, and I remember that, like, how much of stuff did I do by rote where I have no cognition? Like, I was just like, okay, I've got to keep on doing this, A and B and C. Like, I have to keep on going to work, even though I probably wasn't working to my best. I
Right.
have to keep on cleaning my house unless I want to live in a pigsty and wash the dishes, and it was just those small little actions, whether I remember, because I don't remember the first year doing them. Like I did a lot of stuff as if, like, basically in a different, like, living, I was
Yeah.
looking, I was not, in my present, in present state, but still I did it.
Yeah. So while you're talking, I'm also thinking about eh, things that occur in our life that are, life changing or life altering, like having a kid or having an animal come into your life. You can't really remember what life was like before them. You know that I'm sure for you, it just kind of sort of seems like, well, there was time before Tonka, and I don't remember much about that, but then there's Tonka. And I feel the same way about my children and also now my grandchildren. There are certain things I cannot go back to or recreate in my own mind or memory what it felt like to not have them part of my life. I'm not able to reconstruct that in any fashion. And I kind of find the same thing with my particular grief journey over the last 4 or 5 years. And that is, I don't remember what it was like before, just being fat, dumb, and happy, going through life, doing what I did, on a daily basis, having a ball, not having a ball, whatever. Then, the constant whatever it was, and I'm not interested in recreating that feeling, to be perfectly honest with you. I am really interested in the feeling that I have now that's not that. Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
And the thing of it is that what was instructive about it to me was at some point, I just finally realized, you're going to be 70 years old, boy. You're in good health. You don't have a single prescription that you're taking. I take a lot of vitamins, and some ibuprofen every once in a while. But, other than my visit to the dermatologist every 6 months, and to me, it's kind of gotten to like visiting the dentist, for a cleaning or something. And no, I don't mind where I am right now, to be perfectly honest with you. I still have a place to go and things I want to accomplish. You and I have places to go together, that's for sure.
mhm,
But I feel that way with a lot of other people too. And I spend much time as I can being with folks in the present. Even though there's a thrownness to want to share trauma and tell stories and all that sort of thing, which I'm kind of doing right now, but I hope I'm doing it in such a way that it makes it possible for somebody out there who's going through a very tough day today that you will realize that it will pass. And the quickest way for it to pass is for you to choose something different in this moment. And I love what you said. Even if it's wrong, get yourself in action. You can course correct, but at least you'll be in motion.
mhm, mhm,
You know what they say? Don't just do something, stand there, or don't just stand there, do something. You can try both of those. Okay. They're both a choice. They're both an action because you're making a decision one way or the other.
mhm. Yeah, I find that, one thing you said, I mean, I do remember what life was like before certain circumstances. Um, and it was really interesting because when Heidi um, sent me a thing about the show, she asked me for a photo of the
Yeah.
time I'm referring to. And first of all, when I moved, I pretty much got rid of everything. And so I had to look really hard to find a photo, which I did find,
Yeah.
of the two of us together. And I looked at it, and there was something that is there now that was not there then, in my face. And I think that every now and then when I do get nostalgic and I look back, I think to myself, yes, there's a wisdom there, but some parts of me sometimes miss who I was. That glimpse of, maybe it was naivete, maybe it was that idea, like, the ideas I had then, which were, you know, But there is a part of me that does miss that, knowing I
Yeah.
can't get it back. But it's really interesting as I looked at this picture and I thought, wow. I mean, it's a long time, you know, since then. But,
I can
and
share
that's
some bliss for it with you, okay? Guess what? We've got blind spots like right now about how things are. That our next experience or something over the next year is going to change that forever.
mhm. No, absolutely. No, absolutely it will, because I think that that's what's gonna happen. I mean, like we always say, people don't live forever, and, they just don't, as much as there are certain people in my life I can't imagine life without,
Yeah.
but and, depending on what's going on in your life, I remember I think it was you and Ken said something to me after my dad died, and that was I said I was so ill prepared. And I knew it was coming basically. And you guys said to me, "You're never prepared."
Yeah.
And I remember that being such a great thing to say because I think I felt like I can't believe how I feel because I was so like I knew this was going to happen and whatever. But when it happens, all of a sudden you're like, you know, you know. And so I can say that yes, there will be things that will happen that will, you know, change, every day though, whether that be good or bad, you experience things that change you. If you're I mean, I guess if that's your mindset and you're open to it. Or I think it's always changing you. You just may not be aware and you may not want to think about it that way.
Yeah.
And so
So here's the other really cool thing about what you just said. We're going to have gains. Life's not just about, loss experiences. You and I are going to have we're going to have some really good things happen in our life. And why not embrace that? Why not look forward to it? Why not plan for a day of bliss every once in a while, like, and then get out there and do some bliss sharing,
well, it's interesting because I had this, I tend to be very a lot of the time I'm a true person that likes to get to accomplish things. And when I
Right.
accomplish things, that just makes me feel calmer. And knowing that about myself, like, so um, today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
So today's my birthday, and my mom's here. Like, my mom's at my brother's 20 minutes away.
Right.
And she said, "Well, what's your day like tomorrow?" And I said, this was yesterday. I was driving back with her, and I said, "Well, I have a few things on my schedule. I had a client this morning. We have this, and then I have another meeting." I said, "But otherwise," she's like, "Well, I'd really love to see you on your birthday because most often I'm not here on your birthday." And I think part of me was I usually like to lay pretty low on my birthday. I might do celebrations other days, but on my birthday itself, I like to lay low. And then I thought, you know, like my mom said, she's not usually here for my birthday because usually I'm up north and she's in Florida.
Right.
So I think I better, I think not even I better, I think I have to, like in a good way,
Yeah.
go and get a hug, even if we spend 10 minutes together or a half an hour together and then do something later in the week. It was like, I think I need to celebrate that and just take the time for it because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But what an awesome transformation, in the moment where even the word have to, it's like, no, I'm going to know what I did, so nobody else is making you do it. It's just, here's an opportunity to celebrate differently and kind of get off of a position that you've kind of held to for years, probably, because you only
Well,
get one birthday a year, right? I mean,
right.
unless you're one of those people like my mother used to have a lot of birthdays all year long.
Well, I mean, I've always, I learned many years ago that, you're the most connected to whatever you want to believe, whether you believe in God or source or the
Right.
universe on your birthday, on the day you're born. So
Yeah.
years ago, my teacher said, it's really good to one, surround yourself with people who you like positive people, uplifted people, people who inspire on your birthday. So try not to be around people who are negative or whatever. The
Right.
other thing is to take time so that you have that opportunity to connect with something greater than yourself on that day.
Yeah.
And, and so I'm like, but even if I do that and I come home and then I have time for myself later on tonight or whatever, and then tomorrow we go out and do something. But on my birthday itself, eh, you know, I have time today to go and see her. And that's important to me. It was like I said, it was like this feeling like, who knows what's going to happen by my next birthday? And, I better like not let this opportunity. And I looked at it or gift. And I like that word better. Like, I don't want to let this gift pass me by.
Yeah. Yeah. What an encouraging way to consider things that happen in your life. What if all the things that happen to you um, are gifts, but some of them just piss you off, you know?
Well, they are.
Yeah.
They are. They just, it's like you said, it's how you look at it, but it's also looking at those types of things and saying, like looking at them like the whole title of this show, which is an opportunity to learn. Eh, yeah. And yeah, it's very interesting as you're I think I spent the last, let's see, 5 days with my niece, my brother, and my brothers with my niece and her five boys.
Right.
So it was very chaotic, and I'm very happy to be home. But with four who are less than the age of five, so a lot of little people. But as I'm around them, and I think I'm really focused, especially when I spend time, like, over the next few months, I'll see them quite a bit. This idea of how do you, what can you gift children with to help them to have that view of the world? Like move forward, doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I was reading something recently where they were talking about the anxiety in young people.
Yes.
And part of the whole anxiety is this fear of making a mistake and doing something wrong is a specific age groups that they were focusing on that a lot, you know um and it was very interesting to me, uh this whole idea of this. I think I know who it was the rabbi of Central Synagogue was talking about it, I think on Yom Kippur. And she was saying that I guess among I guess it's the youth or the children of some of her congregants, that is kind of like the attitude. Like they have to, and I don't know if that's within a specific social, I mean, it's probably within a specific social class kind of thing, but I was like, wow. And just thinking about my own life in that way of some of the fears that I've had. Was it a fear because I didn't want to make a mistake?
Kind of an interesting dynamic. Um, we learned that, by the way. That's not one of those things that the kid out in the jungle is going to be walking around doing. No, we learn by well-intentioned but really horrible human beings that we call mom and dad that almost everything that we do in life is wrong, you know? And then we get older and we go to school and maybe the corrections are fewer and far between, but instead of mom and dad doing it, now it's the world, you know? Classmates, teachers, bus drivers, the guy who delivers the milk to the room, they're all going to correct you when they think you're wrong. And what we don't understand until we get older, and then we can try this on and play with it a little bit and see if it's really true. but they're not responding to us. In fact, we don't even really exist in their world. We're just something that's sort of an intrusion on their quiet space, you know? So when, especially if there's a really bad reaction, and I got to tell you, the 2 years that we went through, all of the COVID retraining, I don't know if everybody's ever going to get over that completely, but it is something that we do need to unlearn. We need to get back in the mode of thinking for ourselves and not standing around waiting for the next edict to come down from on high. Take the information and use a grain of salt and use whatever investigation tools that you can, but waiting to be corrected for doing something wrong that you didn't know you were wrong, I mean, I remember that feeling. And I mean, it didn't just happen. It was like there were people who got indoctrinated in that whole thing, where I felt like if somebody had actually seen me walking around without a mask on and there was a number to call, like an 833 number or something like that, I think I would have been turned in,
Mm-hmm.
but the bottom line is that we went along because we're a social culture, and we do have a collective responsibility, not just for ourselves but for other people as well. However, we haven't really been trained well enough, I think, to be able to withstand what seems to be negative comments from people that we don't really even know or care about
Mm-hmm.
at sometimes.
I agree. I don't think we're trained at all how to navigate the world in that way. Partly, like you said, because from the time we're born, basically, you're you're around people, sometimes very well-intentioned people, but human beings. I looked at the past 5 days. 4 kids less than the age of 5. Let me tell you, you just want them to be quiet and not fight. And you say a lot, I mean, not me, but you say a lot of things get said because mom and dad are exhausted, like physically exhausted, because you have little ones that aren't sleeping, so they're not sleeping. So you have mom and dad who are exhausted, and so probably very sleep deprived, who probably don't get that much peace, in general.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you have like lots of little people who really all you want to do is just follow directions. Like, and stuff. And so you can understand why a lot of things get said
Yeah.
when, just for this, like, just because I want a moment of quiet kind of thing. I just want a moment of peace. That's all I want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so really interesting as we're chatting about this, because I'm thinking to myself, like, how much stuff gets said either at home and then at school, because you have a classroom of 24 kids, and once one gets loud and riled up, it tends to snowball, and then all of a sudden you're at, everything's out of control, kind of thing. And just for this whole idea, when you talk about like people not being able to make a decision, is just like that whole idea of control. And basically what happened, during, and I also was very well intentioned. I'm not gonna, wasn't gonna go out and want to put it like to put anybody else in danger. So I was very careful and cautious during that whole period. But there is this whole idea of, can I make my own decision? And can I also make those decisions when it's especially in regard to my own health and well being? Like, aren't I the owner of my own, you know?
I can't think of another time where we didn't operate that way. You know what I mean? I mean, a year earlier, we had, I don't know, worldwide 1.9 million people who died of the flu. Nobody did anything different. Every year there's that kind of thing going on. And for the first time ever, we sort of created this hierarchy of decision making that was not based on, guys, we haven't got a clue what this is or where it's going. It was based on something other than that. It was more or less based on, we have to pretend like we know what we're doing here, or we're going to lose that control that you were talking about, where people
Well,
are going to doing
I have
their
a,
own.
I have another thing, and maybe this is a very negative thing to say. And so, Eric, if you think this is negative, just delete it. I'll say that now. On you can day. But I think it was control, and I think there was a money aspect to it. I think there
That's
was a
not negative.
financial. I think there was a financial gain element, and it became a lot more about who was going to benefit financially. And so I think that had a huge contribution to the way things were handled.
Yeah, this was one of the giant oopses of our time. This never should have happened, and the way that the stories were wound up, there's no question at all. There was just a crazy amount of money made available by governments because, well, that's what they were told to do. They were told, this is how we're going to handle this. We're going to do something we've never done before, and that is to take an untested set of drugs and whip them on the entire world population and see what happens. The whole time acting like this is the only way forward. This is the only way we can do this. And afterwards, 4 or 5 years later, we now realize that there are people that are taking resveratrol every day. It's one of the things that was prescribed for certain people when they had COVID the first time around. But we were also told that that was for horses or some other kind of nonsense like that,
Mhm.
and that was true for 3 or 4 different things that they're now part of a prescription process to get people healthy, not just for COVID, but for all sorts of different kinds of viral infections. So I don't know, trust, we talk about an awful lot. Kids get their trust broken a lot. Adults get their trust broken a lot. But most of the time, it really doesn't bother us. But when it does bother us, we are bothered like adults are bothered. You know what I'm saying? We don't get over it very quickly. We also even forget why we have that problem in the first place. I'm having a bad day today. Um, could it be that I'm at a trust deficit with the world, and mayhaps what I need to do is to go trust somebody so I can do that and experience that again? I don't know.
Right, either that or we have judgments or labels, I think, that we travel, as we know, and we've spoken about before, that we travel the world with. And depending on where you are on a given day, sometimes those judgments can color your perception of everything that happens to you on a given day.
Yep.
All the people you meet, um, the different people, like, and I mean, you meet, like, meaning that you don't even know their names, but you encounter is a better word, like the person in the grocery store, and all of a sudden you have a judgment. You have this judgment in your head about the perception of all of humanity or of a particular group in humanity. And all of a sudden, you're navigating the world with those colored glasses on, and that kind of affects, like, if you look at everything through red glasses, everything that's in your purview is then that tinge of red.
Except for your perception of the red goes away. It's just how things are.
Just saying, that's right. Eventually it just becomes normal.
It becomes how things are. And it's kind of like having I don't know, a 25-year-old car that's never had its windshield replaced, where you've got scratches and scuffs and all sorts of things. And you think you're seeing what you're seeing out the front window. But, pick up a rock, in the windshield wiper area and get a new windshield put in. Holy moly. It's a different experience. The car drives much better now.
I love that. But as you say that, I think to myself, well, how often do we just go through the world? And that could be something physical, it could be something emotional, or it could be something, you know, a thought pattern, a story
Right.
where that becomes normal. I look at it physically because it's very easy for me to um, describe to people because they get it. They understand
Right.
what that's like to sit there and say, okay, well, my hip always hurts. And therefore, life becomes normal even with a hurt hip, even with pain in my hip. It just becomes the new normal. And then,
Yeah.
if we want to talk about like ownership and like somewhat making our own decisions, and then we go to a health professional and they sit there and they say, well, that's your age, or they get like, not solving the problem. Well, what do you expect? How old are you, kind of thing. And they kind of belittle it and downplay it and don't acknowledge it. And so you don't like even work to kind of change it because you think to yourself, oh, well, this is normal. And I just have to learn, quote unquote, how to live with it. And I don't think emotional things that we carry are any different. We kind of either bury it and don't see it, or like, or it becomes so deep that, and we know it's there, that we don't really want to look at it because it's not comfortable. And we're like, I really would rather just squash this down for now and not ever, if ever, look at it. And then we have the thought patterns that we have, like those ideas we have about ourselves, or whatever that, that whole process. So basically, we're a mess. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, we're definitely a chocolate mess. There's no question about it. But and when you stop and think about it, the things that get absorbed into our way of being and into our subconscious are no longer. I mean, they're all the same shade of pink, and we can't tell that, and we have to have almost a disruptive circumstance come up to where no, seriously, where something actually is challenged, by what's going on in the real world. But other than that, it's just how things are. It's like if you stand in front of an auditorium of high school aged parents, okay, where they've all got, teenagers, an automatic laugh is to just say to everybody, anybody here have teenagers? When you know that everybody in the seat, has teenagers. Well, we know how teenagers are, don't we? Ho, 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 ho. You can do that in different, and it's always an easy way to break the ice. If you happen to be speaking to a lot of doctors, you can say, anyone here have patients?
Right, right. Either that or
We
you're in a
all
group.
do.
Like, now amongst my friends, it's kind of like anybody have older parents? And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, everybody kind of looks at each other like with that all knowing look of like, I totally understand what you're going through, kind of thing, like
Has become part of how it is.
yeah, that's
We're no longer looking for a disruptive experience with mom and dad, until after they're gone. Then they would give our eye teeth for just one more opportunity to be made bad and wrong by a loved one.
that's right. Well, I was with my cousins yesterday. I stopped over at my cousins, my two first cousins, and so we're like, there's like six of us, their husbands, and my mom and I, and their mom and stuff. And it's just so funny as so it's my mom's sister, so it's just so interesting how different, we know how different siblings can be, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
and my cousins, going in to help to serve in the kitchen with my cousins, and then kind of like, you know basically commenting about, you know older adults or parents, and then my cousin turning and saying, I should be thankful for this, I should be thankful for this.
Yeah.
And thankfully I get along great with my mom, so, and I did with my dad too, so it was not always, but I would say the past 20 years I got along very well with them, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But at that point, and getting to a point where I think I had most of my friends, none of my friends except for one had both parents. Everybody had lost a parent, if not
Yeah.
both. And then really understanding how special it was and then becoming how like that, moving into appreciation of like how thankful it was, even though at points they would drive me nuts, but really never ever taking that relationship for granted, ever.
Yeah.
But that was a very unique opportunity for me and a very wonderful experience, like, which is why I sat there today and I said, well, mom's here, and how often is she here for my birthday? So, I think I better, like, she gave me life. So I think I better go over and I better give her the biggest hug, like, kind
You
of
know
thing.
she did at least one good thing in her life, right?
No, my mom's a great person. She is a great person, but yeah, but really funny. But
Yeah.
I think that there is something about, and that's why, I hope, our listeners at points really someday reach out to us, or if we do anything else, like we do an in-person event, or we do whatever we decide we're going to do going forward together. um I would just love to pass that appreciation on to them. Yeah, for something. I don't care what it is, but take a moment in your day, each day, to figure out something that you can appreciate, that you really, and it could be nature, it could be another person, could be your spouse, could be, you know, a sense that you have, but just take that opportunity because, like, as we know from our grief journey, life's too short.
Well, see, there again, when you're appreciating something, you're outside yourself.
Yep,
You're
absolutely.
looking elsewhere for some feedback in the world.
Mhm.
And I think a really well developed sense of appreciation in a human being is an attractive thing. It's also the access to getting out of a state that you don't want, you know, when, and you can try this at home. If you're in a situation with a relative, and we're heading into what some would call arguably probably the worst 90 days of the year with regard to celebratory uh, holidays, birthdays, just things that have happened, including Kennedy's assassination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, especially the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, all of that stuff. Um, I had a friend who used to language it like this: well, go home and enjoy your time away, reliving the horror of your youth with the original cast. Like, these are the people who gave you all the things that you are in therapy for. So go home and have more fun with that sort of thing. But the flip side of that was, if I didn't have these people, the things that I find really annoying about them, I would miss it. And I'll be darned if that didn't turn out to be true in a lot of cases. I've lost two sisters and a mom and a dad. There's only four of us left. But you know who gets beat on, right? The ones that go away. The
Well, it's
ones.
interesting that you say that, Bill. Sorry, do you want to finish?
No, I was just going to say, I don't, um, no, I think I've said it all. The ones
Yeah,
that don't go away are the ones that are still here and remain behind. They're the ones that can still make noise at each other.
yeah, and we were talking about that. I'm on a meeting on Mondays after this, and we were talking about like being in situations with certain circumstances where for whatever reason we feel different and we don't feel accepted, or we don't feel, and asking yourself periodically, yes, in some cases you have a choice whether you stay with those people. And other opportunities, let's say if it's within a family, you don't necessarily get to make that choice depending on your age. You might not have the opportunity to leave and to not hang out with those people if you feel like, if you feel uncomfortable. And through the years, I've asked myself that question a lot as to like, why am I here in this circumstance with these people? To even this weekend where I was with, why am I, and understanding why I'm there, but then also being compassionate to myself enough during certain conversations where I'm just like, I think I really need to just, go clean up the kitchen at this point.
Go and find yourself a neutral space in the house, right?
That's right, a neutral space in the house where I can just clean and be in my own zone, and then I can come back and I'm in a peaceful state and I can sit down for a moment longer.
Yeah.
But usually it's in really challenging conversations where I don't agree with the views. And it's not like and I'm talking about basic views of life. Fact that I believe everybody is, that each person, that you encounter has a reason for being here and, kind of thing. And so it's usually like the basics of life.
Yeah, not all of us subscribe to that particular belief that everyone's got a reason for being here. Sometimes their reason to be here is just to annoy me, and you know that's the truth. However, again, when you wake up and you start taking a look at why you're annoyed, there's a lesson there if you want it.
Yes, there is. I think we've talked about this, and um, because I think for a long time, I mean, the lessons, like we talk about teaching a lesson, is when I sat there and I realized, as much as they were judging me, I was judging them. And so when I talk about walking, and I was like, ooh, it was like that was a wake up call to me. I remember it was like, wow. I always looked at it as being like, very victim like I was the victim.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I had to step back and say, hmm, oh, yes. Did they treat me poorly? Yes. But on the other hand, I'm being very judgmental of who they are on my side. And I had to
Right.
clean that up, and sort of really adopt the philosophy which I always believed, which was, um, you know, every person has the right to believe what they believe, as long as it's not going to hurt anybody else.
Well, see, the thing of it is, it's profound to say that, but beyond it being a right, they have no choice. You don't get a choice of believing what you believe because what you believe is a pink.
Mhm.
It ain't there. It's just what
Well,
comes out of your mouth, you know?
right. And so much of it is like you said, learned,
Right.
but or maybe it all is learned to some
I like
extent,
that.
to some extent.
Yeah.
Um, but I still, however you want to see it, I do feel like even within those colored glasses, people have the right to navigate the world.
Well, see, that's what we call granting being, okay?
Right, exactly.
However you are, that's perfectly fine. I don't understand how you are right now, and my questions are going to come from there, but I completely support your right and your ability to just be a functioning human being and have some things that you believe. It's all good.
Hmm.
It's what keeps us alive, by the way.
Hmm.
Every little bit of experience that we get is either feeding flight or fight or intelligence. Those are the three domains. The intellectual side, where you get more information as you go along and understand less, or the emotional side, which people don't understand. You know, you can't smart your way out of loss. You can't smart your way out of grief. There's no intellect going on there at all. It's a
Hmm.
completely different domain.
It is. Um, I think for me, I mean, I know I can speak from my own experience that when I was in the situation I was in, my complete idea, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but my complete idea about who I was shattered.
Yeah.
And that's to me what grief does. Our existence in the world all of a sudden, and I'm talking beyond meaning. I'm talking about like our pure existence for being here is mine was totally shattered. And so all of a sudden it was navigating who I was again.
Yep.
And not to say that that's bad, and that's the title of my the title of my chapter, but it was a total, let's say, rebuilding of who I was. Probably better because I was an adult, and in a lot of ways, who I became was who I was truly meant to be, all along.
Right.
Sort of like, the Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
But it
And
really was, I think, the grief thing or those circumstances, and it could be a trauma. It's like the shattering of who we are, or who we thought we were.
yes, probably a good place for us to put a knot in it, simply because we will never be the same two human beings that we were before we got on this week's
Mm,
podcast recording.
absolutely not.
So, would you like to present a scientific summary, to send our guests on their way into a joyful life of bliss and
A joyful life of bliss.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I'll send everybody off with this thing. When I was listening to this podcast, they were talking about being enlightened. Like, what does it mean to be enlightened? And it was, I haven't finished the episode yet, but it was basically small glimpses of clarity. And so, however you think you can find it, whether it's getting outside in nature,
yeah,
getting quiet, um, sitting in quiet with someone else and just feeling the warmth of their hand, while you're in the presence of someone else or another being. I mean, it could be Tonka for me, now. I mean, I'm going to go hug my mother shortly, but after that, but just see if you have any moments where you feel like just very clear about who you are, and and those come in moments. So they were talking about that enlightenment isn't a state you get to and then sort of like you're there forever. How it's usually very fleeting and very could be for a few seconds, where all of a sudden like you're one with nature and you're one with your breath, and you're like, okay, at this moment life is really clear. Like I am a part of this universe or whatever, and the universe is a part of me, and that's all and then something happens, you get shifted out. But look for moments of clarity. That's would be my message to everybody.
I love it. And sometimes the clarity looks like being more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's all it is that I get it. It's going to be okay. And it usually becomes really okay the moment you can actually be with whatever it is that you're not loving all that much. Because fighting it keeps it there, appreciating it and inviting it in and letting it run its course with you, that makes it go away for some reason. You can eliminate that.
Hmm.
So
Anyhow.
well, we're coming up on a high holy day next week. That will be Halloween. It's a biggie in our family because that's the date that my older daughter and her husband were married the second time. They actually got married twice within 3 months of each other. Once on the reservation, and once where we had a family gathering, and the theme was Halloween. It was a Jack Skellington wedding cake, in the whole 9 yards. So it was a lot of fun. But in the meantime,
Uh,
thank,
I'm uh, I'm
go ahead.
laughing because one of my favorite movies is a Tim Burton movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Did you ever
Yes,
see
that's
that?
what we're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, I loved that movie. Yeah, I thought that's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
Yeah. The groom's cake was a coffin with part of his little black book hanging out the side of it, with this. So they really embraced it. It was a lot of fun. But in the meantime, thank you again for sharing yourself with me, my friend. I appreciate you like you can't even imagine. Sometimes I give you credit for saving my life on a weekly basis, and I appreciate you for that.
Thank you, Bill. Likewise. Likewise. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody, and a good week.
Yep. We're lighting the candle. A world that works. God bless all of you.
God bless.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.